Let's take a little look at this nocturne, Opus 4, number 2 by Meritz. So this is a Romantic era piece. And just as an overview of the piece, before we do a walkthrough of it, always with a piece like this, with a strong melody, play the melody on its own. In this piece, that's the notes with stems going up. Despite his little accents, which I've kept in the piece, a lot of these notes are suspensions. So like this first D over a C chord, that D over a C is actually a non-chord tone, so that's called a suspension. It's suspended from the bar before, and then it resolves into that C. D, C. So despite the accents that he gives, I would give a little push on that D and then have a nice gentle resolution afterwards. But anyway, play the melody on its own through the first half of the piece. It's all in the upper voice throughout the piece. And then in the second half though, it's the bass voice that comes out. So all the notes with stems going down. That's from bar 19 onward. And then there's a little bit of top melody, but so it kind of switches pace. You have to like put the melody into the thumb suddenly. So play the melody on its own in the various sections of the piece. The next thing that you'll want to deal with is just the basic rhythm. In the upper voice, there's occasional 16th notes after a dotted 8th note. Or sorry. It's over top of a triplet. Don't overthink it. That E does come slightly after the triplet, but you might want to just kind of get your triplets rolling a little bit first, and then just practice it in isolation. If you're a beginner, don't like more on the beginner side. Don't worry about it too much. Just get it pretty accurate and make sure your quarter note beat is really solid. Maybe use a metronome to make sure you're being accurate with your quarter note beats. And then as long as you're fitting it in, it shouldn't be a problem. Without the metronome, you might find that you're stretching it too much. So the metronome should put you on track. And then once you're on track with it and it's accurate within the quarter note, you can turn the metronome off and relax it just a little tiny bit. That's the way you should usually deal with rubato as well in this piece. Besides that, just one comment about the right hand fingering before we do a walkthrough of the left hand requirements. The right hand fingering, often you're going to be required to do either P and A together or M and A together, which might mean a double thumb. So when you start off, it's fine to use PA, go through the arpeggio as normal, but this next one, double thumb. That way, P, I, M and A are free for those top notes. There's other ways you could do this. You could like roll the fingers up and change them, but I would do thumb, thumb, I, M and A, and then exchange as needed. But you want to just avoid too many repeated fingers. There's a couple of times in the piece where you might need to use repeated fingers, but for the most part, you can work it out where the double thumbs are. And I've marked them in my score here as well. So let's just do a quick walkthrough of the piece. The first part, pretty easy. Just like make sure that this stuff is pretty soft and the melody is coming out. You know, coming out of the texture. You don't want the accompaniment to interfere with the melody. But let's jump ahead to bar 7. You come down through this line. You're going to do a bar A here. So bar, first fret, 6 strings. Then for the open string, you need to do a pivot. So you need to keep letting this bass note ring. but you need that open string. So you're going to actually pivot while keeping those two notes sustaining. Kind of a weird technique for some students. This piece I often use as like an introduction to pivot bars anyway. So you pivot or you bar, pivot, that way everything can keep ringing, and you progress onward. That happens again in the B section here, starting at bar 11. Because you're playing the C there, you're going to fold over, so you're going to pivot into a bar A. And then pivot out, or I should just release it. Pivot in, pivot. Lots of pivoting to that G sharp into the bar A, pivoting, but it'll allow you to keep your first finger there the whole time. So lots of on and off pivoting, and again, I've marked that in the score for you to practice. So that's a spot. Bar 13 is probably a spot you really want to take a look at, and the other spots as well, such as bar 11. When you get over to bar 19, not much to say, just make sure suddenly that you're lightening up the fingers and bringing out your thumb. Don't bring out the fingers too much. You know, it just gets too chunky, it's too blocky, and it doesn't bring out that primary voice. You don't have to go too far with it, but I'd recommend that you practice it in an extreme way. That way when you perform, you have that available to you. You don't have to make it too extreme, but you want to be able to, so that you have access to that kind of texture. And then you just go through the rest of the piece in that way. There's no tricks to some of these shifts. They're just, some of them are kind of tricky. But the good thing is, like, the notes previous are accompaniment. Accompaniment, melody, accompaniment. And then if you have to let go of that F in the accompaniment a little bit early to get the primary notes, that's fine. You just deal with it, right? Sounds fine. Same thing in bar 23, like you're gonna jump those fingers over, and it's not gonna be perfectly legato, but to some extent you don't have to worry too much about that upper C. It's part of the accompaniment. You should be focusing on just the bass voice primarily. So if there's a little bit of like loss of sustain in the upper voice, it's not the end of the world. You just try to cover it up as much as possible. And then as you're approaching the end, make sure you get fourth finger on the C at bar 25. That way you can go back and forth here. Actually, in the video, you can see I actually moved to 3 at the end, but that's not necessary. Keep your fourth finger down. 4, 3, 4, 3. Just finish off with the chord. Hope you enjoyed that Merits piece. I hope to do much more Merits in the near future. I really want to dive into a number of his pieces because there's so many good ones. I haven't had time, but I should start freeing up some time and get more Merits on the site.